Okay, so hi everybody. Thanks for coming over from the auction. We're going to talk about a case that, hold on, let me make sure that we're live. There we are. Case that's making the headlines. To start with, it's about that house that you see there. Police released photos from inside the house, and it's where a man was allegedly held captive for 20 years. So the newly released photos, this happened in Connecticut, and the body camera footage from the night it was set on fire bring to life the astonishing tale of captivity and abuse that was hidden right in plain sight, you might say, for decades. 32-year-old man set the fire in February. He used printer paper and hand sanitizer to escape the house. His stepmother allegedly had kept him locked up and nearly starving for 20 years. His stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, has pled not guilty to kidnapping and felony assault charges, and she was released on a $300,000 bond last week. On February 17th, firefighters responded to a frantic 911 call from Sullivan reporting a fire at the Waterbury house. She claimed her stepson was still inside the house and injured. He kind of passed out. He's out of it, she told the 911 operator. But when the first responders arrived and rescued the 5'9" man, he only weighed 68 pounds. They found him unresponsive, and when he told officers, was deeply concerning. Sullivan was dressed in pajamas, pants, and boots. He clutched a small dog. She clutched a small dog as she spoke to officers outside the house. She told an officer that the door to stepson's room was not locked at the time of the fire, but that it is not normally locked, and that he had freedom to leave his room. In the back of the ambulance, her stepson told first responders a very different story. He said he hasn't had a shower in over a year. One of the first responders said, standing outside the ambulance, the body camera footage captured another exchange between two officers on the scene. I just don't want to effing go anywhere, one officer said, referring to Sullivan. We don't have enough to really detain her. I don't want her to. That soon changed after detectives searched the house where the man claimed he was held captive in an 8 by 9 foot storage space that was secured with plywood in a lock. More than 100 photos from Waterbury police reveal the dire conditions inside the home. Some rooms are visibly charred from the fire, while others appeared cluttered and decrepit due to years of lack in maintenance. Mold is visible throughout the house, which is paved with broken floorboards and carpeted areas covered in dirt and trash. The ceiling appears damaged with exposed beams. The windows are boarded up with plywood. A hot pink room is cluttered with belongings, including a printer, loose plastic drawers, and a leopard print cat tower. Police captured several close-ups of the charred door frames and locks in the house, where the man told officers he was allowed to leave his room only to perform chores. The images bring to life the harrowing tale of abuse that has gripped the nation. Sullivan's attorneys, Loanis Kalotis, called the timing of the photos suspect, raising concerns about potential bias against his client. It was shocking to say the least, he told reporters. The only thing we could think of is that it's clearly being done to sway the public opinion. The photos don't prove anything, he said. Where are the handcuffs? Where are the chains? Where are the signs of restraint? These pictures raise a lot of questions if you look at them objectively. There were concerns about the man's well-being that arose when he was still a child. A former school principal contacted the Connecticut Department of Children and Family Services at least 20 times years ago. The department recently said it found archived records related to the family. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these photos of the inside. Yikes. Yikes. Look at the doily and the lamp. And look at the lamp. It's the leg lamp from A Christmas Story. This is the charred room. See, it's charred. A year ago, okay, so the last time that the boy left the property was with his father when he was about 14 or 15, he told police. After his father died in 2024, he said his captivity became even more restrictive. It got to the point where the only time he would ever be out of the house once his father died was to let the family dog out in the back of the property. Those outings were only about 1 minute a day. Essentially, he was locked in his room between 22 to 24 hours a day. A year ago, he found a lighter in a jacket that belonged to his late father, and that's when he started devising an escape plan. There is a lot of physical therapy that he'll need to go through, said the Waterbury Police Chief Fred Spagnolo. He said there's a lot of healing that he'll have to go through mentally, of course. The Waterbury detectives themselves were shaken by the inhumanity that they said they've seen investigating. They took up a collection to buy the man clothes, books, and other items that might make him more comfortable. As for the newly freed man, Waterbury Mayor Paul Pernuski said, "We're committed to supporting him in every way possible as he begins to heal from this unimaginable trauma." Okay, let's see what this is. And then it says, so he made his first statement. He asked to be identified only as S to protect his identity. He said, "My name is my choice, and it is the first of many choices I will make for myself now that I'm free. This is not the name given to me by my parents when I was born. I'm choosing a new name for myself, and I will use that name as I reclaim control over my life and my future." This is his first public statement that was shared by a spokesperson on Tuesday. On February 17th, he used a lighter to start a fire that led first responders to a small room at 2 Blake Street in Waterbury, Connecticut. The 5'9" man was covered in soot. He weighed only 68 pounds. Once this case, called the House of Horrors, captured the nation's attention, the victim is speaking out to begin the process of reclaiming his life and to have his say in how his story is told. His stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, 56 years old, has pled not guilty to felony charges, including kidnapping, assault, and unlawful restraint. She's accused of confining her stepson since he was around 11. Sullivan, who has maintained her innocence throughout, her attorneys and claims the allegations are false, and she's remaining under house arrest and was ordered by the judge to wear an electronic GPS monitoring device while she was released on bail. Spokesperson said there was no immediate comment. So he said, "I am a survivor of more than 20 years of captivity and domestic abuse. I was held a prisoner in my home from the time I was taken out of the 4th grade at age 11 until 2 months ago at age 31 when I purposely set the fire that helped set me free." He thanked first responders and law enforcement investigators and everyone who is working to hold those responsible for my abuse accountable. He expressed gratitude to the staff at the Safe Haven Waterbury, a center that offers support to victims of domestic violence and domestic abuse, and people who donated to a GoFundMe in his name. He also thanked the healthcare professionals who helped him and nurtured him, along with his attorneys. The survivor said, "He is much better and stronger than I was the day the first responders carried me out of my home. I am beyond grateful for the care I've received since then. To all the healthcare professionals who have helped and nurtured me, thank you." He asked people with knowledge of the story to cooperate with authorities and for the public and media to respect his privacy. "This isn't just a story, it's my life," he said. "Thank you for all your thoughts and messages, your support, and your continued prayers as I recover." The victim told investigators he was locked in a storage room, which had additional locks that were added over time, surviving each day on 2 sandwiches, egg salad, tuna or peanut butter, and a small amount of water. By his teenage years, he said he was constrained to the room for 22 to 24 hours. To relieve himself, he devised a makeshift funnel to direct urine out of the window using straws. The abuse may have begun even before his alleged captivity. He told police that by 4th grade, he was scavenging for food at night, prompting Sullivan to lock him in his room. Eventually, he was removed from the school and was only allowed out to complete chores. Despite 2 wellness checks by the state's Department of Children and Family Services, in 2004, the alleged mistreatment went undetected. At the time, authorities reported finding a home that appeared clean and lived in. Fred Spagnolo said no further action was taken. In January of 2024, the man's father died, leaving Sullivan as the sole caretaker. According to the man, Sullivan's control over him grew even more restrictive. The man told investigators it got to the point where the only time he would be out of the house once his father died was to let the family dog out in the back of the property and for about 1 minute a day. Search warrants later revealed that plywood and locks on the door to his room, corroborating his account of confinement. In his statement Tuesday, the survivor shared a glimpse into his recovery, and he said, "I appreciate the chance to have my first ever birthday party to celebrate turning 32. Wow. All right, let's okay. Next, I'm going to talk about Lori Vallow. Lori Vallow. All right, so let's see what happened. Day 7 of Lori Vallow. Tomorrow will be day 8. Yeah, tomorrow's day 8. All right, so let's go to day 7 here. All right. Okay, so the Chandler detective Nathan Duncan was the one that was sick yesterday, couldn't come in, and couldn't testify, but he's going to take the stand. Took the stand today. Lori is in a lilac blouse under a black pantsuit. The judge jokingly said to Detective Duncan, "You're not going to throw up on the witness stand. If so, don't go my direction." Yeah, funny. Okay. Duncan was working on July 11th of 2019. He learned of a shooting in Chandler from the police radio, and he looked at the jury when answering the questions. He arrived on scene. Emergency vehicles were already on scene when he got there. He saw Alex Cox from a distance. Alex Cox was sitting on the sidewalk. We've seen that a million times on the police cam. The investigator Duncan did not get too close to him. He never saw Lori Vallow when he arrived. He met with other detectives and was asked to assist Detective Coons with the crime scene. Search warrant was obtained to go inside the house. They entered at 11:53 a.m. At the time, Duncan was not aware of when the 911 call had been made. He is now aware that it was made at 8:36 a.m. He noted the wrong time in his report as 8:32. Alex Cox called 911 at 10:37 a.m. today. He said before going into the house, the crime scene technicians walked through the home. The Lizard Q system took pictures of the scene. Duncan remembers white and black checkered flooring, and the first room had no furniture. There were mirrors on the walls, and he noticed that Charles Vallow's body was lying on the western portion of the room with his head to the north and his feet to the south. Before going into the house, crime scene technicians walked through the home. Let's see. Trina Kay asked if Charles Vallow appeared to be fit. Yes, he said. Trina asked if Duncan noticed a lot of blood. He said he did not, but he noticed some blood in the webbing of Charles's left hand. Duncan feels the blood came from Charles placing his hand on his chest after he was shot. There was no blood on the floor area around Charles's body. Trina Kay showed a photo of Charles lying on the floor in the house. Kay Woodcock is in the courtroom looking down, not looking at the picture. There were no cracks or damage on the mirrors. Duncan noticed a baseball bat near Charles's head. Duncan was looking for blood, evidence that could help with their investigation, but there wasn't any. There was blood on the faucet of the kitchen sink, like a smear of blood. There was no bloody towels or anything that looked like that had been used to clean up blood. Trina Kay showed a photo of a room with black and white stripes on the wall. There's an orange duffel bag next to a garbage bag and a gun next to that bag. Duncan was responsible to make the gun safe. He put on gloves. He picked up the gun. He looked for blood or biological evidence. He removed the magazine. He cycled the gun to remove any cartridges inside the chamber, and a single .45 caliber cartridge fell out. Trina showed photos of the gun and the single casing that fell out of the gun. Duncan found a gun case inside the orange duffel bag. There were extra magazines inside the gun case. On the outside pocket of the duffel bag, Duncan found a card. It was a health savings account card with the name Alex Cox. Trina asked about the gun. When you're looking at it, did you look at all sides of it to see if there was any blood evidence on it? He did look, and there was not any. Trina asked Duncan if he knew when he walked into the scene that Alex Cox had an injury to the back of his head. Duncan did not know, but learned during the investigation. That made us more aware of the potential blood evidence, and that's why we were looking for it. The serial number was collected from the gun, and it was registered to Alex Cox. Duncan said he was present when the medical examiner came to collect Charles Vallow's body. Duncan and other crime scene investigators cleaned up the blood under Charles's body. When cleaning up the blood, I would immediately notice a defect in the floor consistent with a bullet. The defect was near where the bullet would have exited out of Charles's left shoulder. Trina showed a photo of the floor showing marker number 13 next to where the bullet strike was found. The bullet in the floor was 100% consistent with Charles being shot while lying on the floor. Duncan said the wood portion was cut out of the floor for evidence. Duncan did not attend the autopsy. Duncan said the rental car was not searched and Lori Vallow had it all day and it was not searched. Duncan was assigned as case agent in June of 2020. He helped Detective Moffat sort through iCloud data and other parts of the investigation. Duncan reviewed the cell phone extraction data that included emails, text messages, and anything you might see on someone's smartphone. Trina asks, what is an iCloud? Duncan says it's an account that stores information and files from a phone, computer, and other electronics. People may be aware their files are being saved, but others may not know. Duncan said there was a change in the communication between Lori and Charles on iCloud accounts after June 27th of 2019. Duncan found multiple text messages between Charles and Lori related to an email. Charles contacted Chad Daybell and Tammy Daybell after Charles found the email. A search warrant was authorized on the email account. The name of the person subscribing to the email account was Karen Walker. The phone number linked to the email address was linked to an old phone number belonging to Lori Vallow. The email account was opened on April 21st of 2019 when Charles and Lori were in Houston. Trina K has asked the email as evidence to admit it as evidence, and Lori objects based on relevance. The judge lets the email in. The email account was used from April to June. Trina says and now shows that emails were sent starting April 21st. The first one was sent to Brother Daybell, to Chad Daybell's email address. The email says it's from Karen inviting Brother Daybell to Houston. There's another email from the account reporting to be Charles Vallow regarding the Prepare a People conference. Lori was involved in the conference. The email appears to show Charles writing an email to Chad inviting him to come and write a book. This is the email that Charles found and then reached out to Lori, Chad, and Charles about it. Charles also sent the letter to Adam Cox. Lori was in Arizona. Charles was in Houston when Charles found the email. The first time Charles and Lori saw each other after he found the email was on July 11th. Charles had helped Lori move to Arizona prior to the discovery of the email. Search warrants were executed on two of Lori's iCloud's accounts, Lolly Time and Lori for Style. Duncan found evidence that Lori flew to Idaho in March of 2019, and Lori and Chad flew back to Arizona the same month. Duncan found text messages between Adam Cox and Charles. We now see the Celebrate report on the screen that shows what the text messages were received and what time it was read. As Charles was arriving at the house on July 11th, he was texting with Adam. Adam testified about these messages last week. The Celebrate report shows texts that Adam was sending to Charles on the morning, and they were read almost immediately. But when the messages were no longer being read, the final message sent from Adam wasn't read until 12:13 p.m., hours after Charles was dead. So someone else was reading those, Trina says. Correct, Duncan says. Duncan found evidence that Lori and Alex went through Charles's phone on July 11, 2019. Trina pulls up an image of Charles's phone, and on the screen is a text exchange between Charles and Adam. It shows the information about Charles booking a flight for Adam to visit Phoenix. The Chandler Police Department has possession of Charles's phone since around 3 p.m. on July 11, 2019. Duncan talks about how he got the search warrants for Lori's iCloud account and how they knew it was Lori's accounts. Trina moves to admit the evidence. Trina publishes the first exhibit for the jury. It's a document that shows the extraction report from the iCloud. Alex Cox sent Lori the flight plans for Adam's trip on July 13th, 2 days after Charles died. It was sent to Lori prior to Adam's trip concluding. Adam or Lori got the information from Charles's phone, likely after he died, from 7:49 a.m. until 8:36 a.m., 47 minutes passed. Trina asked, did Charles Vallow just lay dead on the floor before Alex Cox called 911? And Duncan said yes. Trina showed a call log made from Alex Cox's phone. On July 11th, he made an outgoing call to Lori at 7:52 a.m. Lori had left the phone left the home at 7:49 with Charles's phone. 3 minutes later, Alex calls. The call lasted for under a minute, 49 seconds. Adam's next call was made at 8:06 to Lori. It lasted 55 seconds. At 8:06 a.m., Alex had not called 911. Charles Vallow had been on the floor dead for at least 17 minutes. Alex Cox waits another 30 minutes before he calls 911. Lori Vallow never called 911, according to Duncan, and she never called on either of her phones or on Charles's phone. At 11:30, Lori returns to the home. Not 11:30, at 8:48 a.m. she returns to the home. Duncan says call records show Adam was trying to reach Alex when he arrived in Phoenix. A text message was sent at 3:23 p.m. from Adam to Alex. Alex never responded to Adam, either via phone or text. At 6:28 p.m., Adam sent another text. Alex never responded. Trina asked if Duncan found a copy of a lease agreement for the house when he was going through the iCloud. He said he did. The lease agreement was shown for the Phoenix home on the screen. The lease was from June 22nd of 2019 through June 30th of 2022. In June and July of 2019, Charles was living in Houston, and Charles flew to Phoenix on July 10th of 2019. Trina moved to admit exhibits from the Lori Forstyle iCloud account. Duncan said he found recordings related to Chad Daybell in the account. There was one from November 17th of 2018 of Chad in Arizona speaking at a Prepare a People. Duncan found text messages between Lori and Alex. Duncan became aware of this name, Ned. Ned was the name of the dark spirit that had taken over Charles's body. And in knowing this, I went through these records looking for the mention of Ned. Trina showed the text messages that were sent between Lori and Alex. Lori sent messages on February 15th of 2019 saying, Ned was at Temple yesterday looking for you. He thinks you're staying with me. Lori sent a message to Alex on March 2nd saying Ned came by and Tylee unleashed on him. He came to my house and we went to Summers first. He ran up in a rental car. There were other messages between Lori and Alex about Ned throughout March. On March 26th, Lori wrote, no one has seen him, right? Just talk to him? Alex responded, correct. Charles's body is alive. What did you learn? Lori responded, still working on it. We'll call you later. There were a lot of records of Lori telling people to call her. There was no recordings of those calls. A Lolly Time email account was created after Charles contacted Chad and Tammy Daybell about the affair that his wife was having with Chad. Duncan found the change of beneficiary life insurance documents in the iCloud. Lori sent photos of the beneficiary form to a person named Bubby. The first photo shows that she is the primary beneficiary of Charles's life insurance policy, but the next photo shows information about the policy. The next photo is a picture of a computer screen that shows Kay Woodcock as the new beneficiary, the form Charles used to change the policy. The messages were sent on July 28th, 2019. Trina says, did you guys want to find out who Bubby was? Absolutely, Duncan said. A warrant was obtained for the search records to find out who Bubby was. The person was found to be Chad Daybell. In addition to that, they received an audio recording from a local business in which Chad contacted the business and listed this as his phone number, according to Duncan. Duncan went through many, many text messages between Lori and Alex. They were saved in the Jolly Time account. Lori gave Alex the new address for the home, and Duncan saw messages leading up to July 11th. They'd be like Neffy. Text messages were sent on July 9th, and they were stored in the iCloud. On July 12th, she sent a text message talking about going to Social Security. Trina moved to admit an exhibit showing some text messages between Alex and Lori that were found on the iCloud. Trina displays some of them on the screen. The text messages are from July 8th. Lori tells Alex that Mel is coming over. Alex asks for the home address. They go back and forth, and Lori sends a message around 9 p.m. saying, so the plot thickens. Call me when you can. At 9:50 p.m., Lori texted Alex, getting sleepy, so I'm going to need you to stay close to me the next few days. Mel too. She can't go to Utah. They are planking some kind of intervention. Lots to do. Thank you for standing by me. It's all coming to a head this week. I will be like Nephi, I am told, and so will you. Lori and Alex then had a conversation for nearly an hour. Duncan said he knew that Nephi was a figure in the Book of Mormon, but did not understand the significance. He did research to figure out who Nephi was. Okay. Going through the iCloud took a lot of time and a lot of search warrants, Duncan said. He was aware that Adam and Charles were talking about an intervention. The same day Adam and Charles were talking, Lori was telling Alex about the fact that they were planning an intervention. Back in the courtroom, Judge Justin Bursky is on the defense bench. Lori's at the table. The prosecutor's there. Judge says he has a draft of a potential jury instruction for the parties to review tonight. Jurors are being brought in. Detective Nathan Duncan is back on the witness stand. There were some technical problems, so the judge temporarily excused the jury. They were working on getting the technical issues resolved. Then someone with the blue shirt walked in and tried to fix up the projector and stuff. The jury is now back in the courtroom. Trina Kay reminds the jury that they were talking about the text messages from July 9th about Nephi. She shows a new page on the report with messages from July 10th. There's messages between Alex and Lori about meeting up for lunch with Mel, referring to Melanie Pavlovsky. Lori invites Alex to her house, and there are no text messages between Lori and Alex on July 11th. On July 13th, Lori texted Alex, "Need you. Adam is freaking out." Adam found out Charles was dead on that date. On August 12th, Lori texted Alex at Social Security. These are not all the texts sent between the two of them during this period, just the ones relevant to this case. Trina says on September 3rd that Lori texted Alex, "Bad news on our brother." Alex responds, "What's that?" Lori replies, "Z." Alex responds, "Really? When was that?" Lori responds, "As of early January, Alex. This explains his interest in Charles." Lori, "Ned recruited him shortly after. This is why." Another text, "He's part of the 24 hours. Alex responds, "That makes sense." Lori continues to speak of more Z's. Duncan testifies, "Lori, more sad news," she says. Guess who the final Z is of the 24? Alex says, "Pops or Brandon?" Lori says, "Zach." Then, "Nope. Think of Judas, who loved me completely, then turned against me." Alex asks Lori when this happened. Lori says, "About the time he turned." Makes sense. He began directing to Brandon and Ned. Alex, "So February, Lori?" "Yep, Alex." "How did Zach die, or was he forced out?" "It's crazy, I know, but it's sad and it's true. And now we know all 24. Lori replies to Alex's question, "I forced out, I think. With his anxiety, he wasn't strong enough to fight back. Z or zombies and others who helped Charles were equally dark," Duncan says. The jurors seem focused on the messages. Some were taking notes. Prosecutors moved to admit text between Summer Shiflett, Lori's sister, and Lori on July 10th. A reminder that Zach is Adam's son. Summer texts Lori, "Can you talk?" Then Mom is in the car with Adam and Zach on the way home from Sky Harbor. Then she wanted to know if she should comfort him as a preemptive strike. I told her no and to collect info. This Summer sends a text from Mimi. Adam thinks Melanie left for Utah today because that's the last he knew. I just left it that way. Summer messages. They are headed down to Mimi's house, and then Zach and Adam are headed to the 420 Spider-Man movie and coming here. Then I think so. Just me and the kids are here. Then JJ left his wrist bracelet and ukulele there. These messages are all being sent on the afternoon of July 10th. Adam does not know Charles is dead. More text messages back and forth from about where Adam might stay. Adam ends up staying at his parents' house on July 11th. Summer texted Lori, "How's it going today?" No response from Lori. Trina now asked about Melanie. Duncan learned who Melanie B was, Melanie Boudreau, Lori's niece. There are mentions of Mel throughout the text messages, including the need for Melma to go to Utah. Okay. Next exhibit is admitted messages between Melanie B and Lori. On July 9th of 7/21, Lori texts Melanie, "Need to talk to you ASAP. Then I'll call you in 5, finding out what to do." Melanie responds, "K." And then, "I took the kids to temple and they are chasing the bunnies." Lori sends a message to Melanie, "You can't go tomorrow. It's a setup for both of us." Still on the phone, finding out the details. Melanie responds, "Okay." Lori replies, "They have an elaborate plan. I'll call you soon." Melanie says she can't take all of the kids and defend herself. Lori tells her she can't go. Lori says it's coming to a head. The week will change everything. Melanie says, "Probably why I felt sick about going." The messages are being sent to Melanie as Lori is also texting Alex. The messages referenced below. Back to the Melanie messages. She said she can pretend to be sick, but who will go to the gym, temple, and lunch? On July 10th, Melanie asks about Adam and Charles visiting. Lori responds that they are both coming tonight. Melanie, "So today doesn't really matter. I have the kids. I should probably be sick again tomorrow." Lori says, "I think so, but I think they are moving their plans to tomorrow, so they will still try to get rid of you." There is a discussion with Melanie about wanting to go to a wedding. Lori says, "I know, baby, I'm so sorry. This is important to your mission, even though I know it's hard to just sit up there." Melanie texts that she is at the gym and asks if they can meet for lunch. Lori agrees to meet up for lunch. Melanie says Brandon has been there the whole time, and Lori tells Melanie that maybe she can go to the wedding on the night of the 11th, and Melanie needs to be there in the morning, but maybe she can go in the evening. In the morning, okay. Melanie and Lori continue to text back and forth. Melanie's pretending to be sick for Lori as a distraction to Brandon. Melanie responds that she's packing for the move. Lori says Alex is there, and Charles will come in the morning. Melanie tells Lori she'll head over on July 11th. Melanie tells Lori that Zach is here. He just acted like he was coming over to get the mail. He told Brandon, "Oh, hey, Adam is in town." Brandon acted like he didn't know. I asked if he was moving in with Adam, and he said he didn't know yet. Melanie sent another message. "I can fly out at 9 p.m. today and back Saturday afternoon." These texts were sent after Charles was shot. As Duncan was looking through the text messages, he was having to figure out some of these people, who they were. Duncan said he learned Bubba was Chad Daybell. Trina asked if every text message saves in the iCloud. He says no, they do not. He said they also looked up phone records to see if they were missing records. Goodness. There were text messages between Chad's phone and Lori's phone on July 11th and the surrounding dates. The iCloud did not save the content of the messages, so we don't know what was said, but we do know that they were texting. After Lori was interviewed by police and brought back to the residence, there was a call between Lori and Chad. There was another call a bit later that lasted over 8 minutes. This was around the time Detective Young Clan called Lori and asked her to come back on the scene at 5:42 p.m. There was a call between Chad and Lori that lasted over 30 minutes. Okay. There was another call at 7:54 between Lori and Chad that was over 13 minutes. And at 7 p.m. there was another call that lasted approximately 11 minutes. Trina moves to admit the James and Alina story before Getting to that, we see the text messages between Chad and Lori, talking about Lori's family. Chad begins talking about how much Raphael is deeply, deeply, crazily, madly in love with Lily. Chad is Raphael, Lily is Lori. Trina asked if there were messages of love between the two. There were. Trina says we won't read through the whole entire story, but the timeline of the story matches up to when Chad and Lori met in Preparing a People. On July 14th, Chad messaged Lori about cleaning the Houston house to remove the darkness he caused. Charles was living in Houston. Messages about affirmations of love and cheek to cheek join, loin to loin between the couple. I'm so tired. Trina asked where Chad was living during this time. He was in Idaho. The messages continue until Chad said he needed a shower, and now there's messages between Lori and Chad and the life insurance. She isn't getting the money, but she will still get Social Security payments. It's on July 18th when she's telling Chad she will get the Social Security money. There are multiple affirmations of love back and forth every day. Trina says now that Charles is dead, there's a very open phone relationship between Lori and money, but she will still get the Social Security payments. It's on the July 18th when she's telling everyone, Chad, she will get the Social Security money. There are multiple affirmations of love back and forth every day. Now that Charles is dead, there's a very open phone relationship between Lori and Chad. Duncan found a Melanie 2 in the contacts. The number linked in the content of Melanie 2 is Lori's iCloud, which linked to Chad Daybell. The photo of Melanie 2 was Chad's. On July 17th of 2018, Melanie sent a message to Lori that said, I took a photo with Alan Osmond for Mark. We see the photo of Chad and Alan Osmond. Chad and Lori text back and forth about the beneficiary. Lori says, it's a spear through my heart. What do you think he changed it to? Who do you think he changed it to, Brandon or Kay? Chad says, asks if he could tell who gets the money, if she can tell who gets the money. Lori says she might be able to check when she gets Charles's computer on Sunday. Chad suggests that maybe the name of the beneficiary was forged. You should bring a good paper trail to prove it. Chad says, I love you. This is terrible. It's probably another bringing down the Gideontons, especially Brandon. Trina asked Duncan what the Gideontons are. He said he's not sure. Chad suggests that maybe the name of the Chad says it will be interesting if it got changed after the 2 bullets in the chest. Lori, I don't think it could have. You can't change it after the death date. They would review that. Lori says she thinks Kay is the beneficiary. She says she's going to shower and give him a blessing. Trina asked Duncan if Lori was married to Charles on July 11th. He said yes. Trina asked if there was evidence of when Lori became Lori Daybell. He says he found evidence on the iCloud that Chad and Lori got married in Hawaii, specifically wedding photos. Trina moves to admit the evidence. Okay. They show an exhibit about the wedding ceremony contract between Chad and Lori. The photo was found on the iCloud. The date of the wedding was November 15, 2019, so 4 months after Charles Daybell was shot and killed inside the defendant home. She was married to Chad Daybell. Duncan said yes, and then Trina had nothing further, and Lori started the cross. Lori gathers her items and walks up there. She asks Detective Duncan if he became the case agent in 2020. She asked about a prior case. Detective Moffitt, he got promoted to lieutenant, and then Duncan took over. Lori asked Duncan what he did differently than Moffat when he took over the case. Duncan says he didn't really do anything differently, but he reviewed what Moffat had done and continued to spend time investigating. Lori asked what time Duncan got to the scene. He said shortly after 9:15 a.m. Lori asked if he was at the house the entire time. He said he did leave for a short time to obtain a saw to get flooring and baseboard, but then he came back. Lori wants clarification on when he went to the house, before or after the search warrant. He says original first responders went in and then everyone got out of the house until the warrant was obtained. Duncan did not go into the house until he had the search warrant. Lori has said, I'm confused a few times, and Trina objects. The judge says, just ask the question. Lori, hold on a minute. Lori asks about Charles being taken away in the ambulance. Duncan says he never went in an ambulance. He didn't go in an ambulance? No. His body was taken by the medical examiner. Lori asked Duncan to describe what he did when he went into the house. Lori asks, has everyone left the crime scene at 4:30? Duncan says yes. Some may have stayed behind and typed notes in their car, but the search warrant was complete at 4:30, 4:45. Lori asks about a walkthrough with Alex. Duncan was present. So was Moffat, Werther, Coons, and crime scene technician Jordan. Lori asks if a body camera was worn. Detective Werther was wearing a body camera, but Duncan says it's malfunctioned and did not record. Lori asks if each of the detectives wrote reports about the walkthrough because there was no body cam. Duncan says it would have been included in the report. Lori asked if Duncan had read all the reports since he became the case agent. Duncan said yes, at one point or another he has. Lori asked if Duncan read Werther's report. Duncan has. Lori asked repeated questions about the walkthrough, and the prosecutor objects based on hearsay. Asked and answered. Judge sustains. Lori asked if Duncan knew who was being interviewed and tested in the case. He is aware. Lori asked about the bat being tested for fingerprints. Results were inconclusive. Lori asked about the bat being swabbed for DNA and sent to the lab. Duncan says that it was never tested. Lori asked why not. Duncan said the bat was owned by Tylee in a house owned by Lori and a house where Alex was staying. Plus, Charles could have had access to the bat, so if someone touched the bat at some point, DNA could be on it, so a DNA test wouldn't have proven much, Duncan explains. Lori asked if a DNA test would have found blood on the bat. Duncan says blood would be visible on the bat, and they didn't see any blood on the bat. Lori said, when you're doing an investigation, are you trying to figure out what happened? Duncan said yes. Lori asked, whose responsibility is it to get the bat tested for DNA? Duncan said it would be him as the new case agent, or Detective Moffat when he was the case agent. Lori said if the bat had been tested for DNA and Charles's DNA was on it, it would have backed up Tylee's interview that Charles grabbed it. Prosecutor objects, judge sustains, and tells jury not to consider what was just said. Lori asked about the firearm being tested in the process. What happens to get it tested? Lori asked if Duncan decided to test the gun after the interviewer asked why it hadn't been tested. Duncan says he has never spoken with her investigator. Lori asks why Charles's shirt and other items weren't tested. Because I was confident in the medical examiner's report that Charles had been shot twice. Duncan says, Lori asks if Duncan was at the shooting to witness it with his eyes. He said no. Lori asks if she turned her husband's phone over. When asked, yes. Lori asks if Alex turned his phone over willingly. Duncan says he wasn't sure if Alex turned over his phone. Lori references a body camera when Alex turned over his phone, and Duncan recalls seeing the photo. Lori asked if Duncan knows who drove Alex to the police department. Lori said, the one I couldn't remember. Trina objects, and the judge tells Lori not to testify. Lori asks if there was any celebrate of Alex's phone. Duncan says the only thing they have is the cell phone records. Okay. Lori continues cross-examination. She asked Duncan if Janice Cox was interviewed. Did you read or watch her interview? Duncan says he has not. He said he did not interview Summer Shiflett. He has not watched her interview. He did not interview Barry Cox or watch his interview. He only has a source through the brother Adam. Duncan said none of the people she mentioned were at the shooting. Lori asked if they asked any people in her family what they meant by those messages. Then she says, "Did you ask me what I meant by those text messages?" He responds, "I couldn't." Lori says the only person in our family who got information from was the estranged brother in our family who didn't even know what was going on himself. Prosecutor objects. The judge sustained. Lori re-asked the question. Another objection. Lori rephrases it. "Is this your normal protocol to just talk to one witness and not others?" Duncan says no. Lori asked Duncan how many interviews Summer has had with the police department. Duncan doesn't know. Lori said more than one or two. Duncan says, "I don't know." Lori says, "But you didn't ask her any of the questions about the text messages that were on the screen." Duncan said no. Lori asked Duncan if he forms a conclusion and sticks to it and only investigates things that lead to it. Duncan says no. Lori asked about the story of Nephi and asked Duncan what research he did. Duncan says he Googled who Nephi was and said and what did Nephi stand for. He says that he also asked members of the LDS church to tell him about Nephi, and they all tell him that the story of killing Laban. Lori asked Duncan if he's aware that there are many stories of Nephi in the multiple books in the Book of Mormon. Duncan's not aware. Lori asked Duncan if he read the Book of Mormon. Duncan says no. "You just asked people about Nephi?" Duncan says he did an internet search and spoke with church members. Lori asked Duncan how long he did his research. "I couldn't tell you," he answers. Lori says there are 25 stories about Nephi in the Book of Mormon, and there are 4 different prophets named Nephi in the Book of Mormon. Trina objects to the question. The judge overrules and says the question can be asked. Duncan asked Lori to repeat the question. She doesn't remember the question and asked the court reporter to repeat it. The judge repeats the question. Duncan was not aware of the many Nephis in the Book of Mormon. Lori says Duncan if he has knowledge that Lori's text messages about Nephi were similar to order to kill. Duncan is not. Lori asks if Alex was a stand-up comedian and always joking. Duncan says he was a stand-up comedian. Lori says Alex was often joking and half his text messages were jokes. Lori asks Duncan who is on his team and who is working on this case right now. Lori says he's the only person on it right now. Back in the day, it was Duncan and Coons. Periodically, Detective Werther did some work. They had a small, cramped area, and they just talked with each other about the case. Lori said it was important to luminol the bat. Duncan said there was no blood present on the bat, and they decided they were not going to do that particular process. Lori asked if it's possible to not visibly see blood on the bat, but it's still on there, and they said protein could still be on the bat. Lori asked if luminol was used on the gun. It wasn't. He said there was no blood on the gun. Lori says, as the case agent, they have access to do testing on the bat and gun. Why didn't you test them? He says he didn't think it was needed. He made choices and decisions based on the facts presented to us. I did not feel it was necessary. You have charged me with the crime, correct? Lori asked. Duncan says, I have not. The state of Arizona charged you. She asked why the tests were not done. Lori has nothing further. Trina will follow up. Trina begins asking about luminol. It's generally used after a scene is cleaned and there's no visible blood. Duncan says they were under the impression that the homicide occurred 5 minutes before the police arrived. They did not expect a cleaned up scene. They were looking for the visible blood hairs on the bat, etc. They didn't see any of that. After Duncan began learning more about the case, they realized how extensive the timeline was, and what they were told originally didn't match. Trina asked about the iCloud accounts. Duncan said each iCloud account had terabytes of data. It's tedious because you can only look at a particular iCloud at a time. Go through that and make notes. You have to close out and go to the other iCloud back and forth to compare. What we have seen in the court is just a grain of what has gone on through the iCloud accounts. Trina asked about Duncan not knowing the background of all the individuals in this case. At the beginning of the case, as Duncan learned more about all the people, he obtained all the information, phone records, iCloud. He needed probable cause to get the information. Trina asked if DNA is only found in blood. It's found in saliva, sweat, and other ways. If the bat belonged to Tylee, her DNA would most likely be on it. Duncan said he looked at the bat and there was no visible blood and no damage to the tip of the plastic part of the bat. Duncan asks if the doctor who performs the autopsy goes to scenes. He does not. The autopsy is done at the medical examiner's office. Duncan saw the bullet in line with the shoulder and the defect in the ground. Duncan never had information that Janice or Barry or Summer were at the scene. Summer was actually headed out of town. When Duncan began investigating the stuff in the iCloud, he didn't understand the talk about Ned. He had to consult with others like Serena Sharp for details on what it meant. Trina is talking about Nephi. Duncan says he spoke with the Latter-day Saints church members, and they spoke about Nephi the same way Adam did, that he was commanded to kill a wicked man. Trina asked if the physical scene itself was inconsistent with what was originally told to police. Yes. Did it require additional research into all the different iClouds, cell phone records, etc.? Duncan spent months going through the iCloud data. Trina's no further questions. And there was a question from the jury. The jury is discussing the question whether the prosecutor and the defense attorney have white noise. The judge asked the question regarding the pictures on Alex's phone, sent to Lori what time was on the phone, 2:13 p.m. Then this is a photo of Charles and Adam messaging about his flight info. No further questions for this witness. State has no further questions and no further witnesses, and they rest their case. Judge asked Lori if she plans on presenting evidence. She consults with her attorney. 2 people on the state's original witness list, Detective Nathan Moffat and Jason Honsacker, did not testify. Lori says the state did not present evidence that she conspired to commit a premeditated murder. She wants that on record. Trina responds that there is sufficient evidence that the defendant and Alex Cox conspired to commit the murders. Lori has nothing to add after Trina says there was sufficient evidence. The judge finds there's substantial evidence that a jury could find the defendant guilty. The judge denies Lori's motion. He asks if evidence will be presented tomorrow, and the defense rests. Trina suggests that closing arguments should begin Monday. Lori agrees. Jury will report on Monday, so there's no more court for them. This means she cannot testify or change her name. She is prepared to rest today. The court is going to meet tomorrow to finalize the jury instructions. And that's it until Monday. That's it for that, Lori. No more Lori. That jury should be out real quick, I betcha. Let me see here. Okay, now we're going to talk about the fallout with the Austin Metcalf case. Okay, let me get that graphic pulled up here. Okay, so there's still more false information being spread in this case. Hold on, I'm just trying to get this graphic up here. Okay. All right, so there were false reports. There were changes in Meta that may have contributed to Facebook fake news. Dr. Daxton Chip Stewart, a journalism professor at Texas Christian University who specializes in social media, said that while the spread of disinformation online isn't new, but the recent changes by Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, have exacerbated the problem. Because they're stopping their fact checkers and they're relying on people to report things. That's ridiculous, okay? And then all this stuff is going unchecked. There's they're saying that there's autopsy results, and it's all fake, Okay. Ouch. All right, so there's just a lot of stuff going on in all kinds of forums, on Reddit, on Facebook, on X, all this stuff about this case, and it's just crazy. And all the misinformation that's being spread, and all the people that are just making this completely about race and not about what's really gone on there. And they still haven't given out more information about that prior assault in February that Carmelo Anthony was involved in, and I don't understand why that is so difficult. Let's see here. So let's see. There were tensions around the case. The judge overseeing it was doxxed and threatened online after she lowered the teen's bond. On top of that, Anthony himself has started getting probed and attacked by online critics over a report from the Daily Mail, which alleged the 17-year-old is living in a luxurious $900,000 home with his family, and he's raking in hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations from strangers on the internet. And they also said that there's a parade of Amazon packages being delivered to the house. The criticisms at first glance center around Anthony's claims of self-defense in the stabbing of Austin Metcalf at a track meet earlier this month. Things got much worse and much more political in recent days when Anthony's case was being propped up as a race relations issue. Anthony is accused of killing Metcalf at a track meet on April 2nd. The narrative being spread is false, unjust as a family. See, that's what they put on their fundraiser. For reasons unknown, the defendant brought a knife to a track meet for what probably could have been a fist fight at worst, said the Collin County First Assistant Bill Worski. Family can make this $1 million bond as soon as they get access to it. I don't know why we are here. Just can't find anything on that prior assault, but it's going on and on. Just all this backlash from this. All right. Okay. Hi, Maureen Gunn. How are you? I am exhausted. I'll tell you that, and I've got to get some sleep. So I have a bunch of medical tests on Friday, and I've got to get some sleep. Okay, let's see here. Let's do the daily puzzle, and I'm going to call it a nighty-nighty. Okay. Empire. Ream, okay. Ream, very good. What is it? Hi, Scooter, I can't get this. Oh my goodness. I think we gotta need some help here. Okay, E. Okay, good murder. Now what is this other one? Huh. There we go. There we go. Oh, you guys got it at the same time as me, huh? I got that. Alright, I'm gonna go to bed. I can't get my eyes open anymore, guys. I love you. God bless. Prayers. I'll see you tomorrow. Be good. Bye now. God bless.